Sometimes shame just fucks things up.
I think curiosity and self-awareness are two of the most amazing things that a person can have to really get to them to that next level.
It's curiosity without shame or embarrassment.
Yes.
Because as adults, like we were in these situations where we don't ask the most basic things because we're embarrassed. The hardest thing about coming out as gay back in the 90s is...
What's the latest trend? 1 minute you're taping your mouth shut. The next you're supposed to sip a nightly glass of wine or swear it off. Egg yolks are the heroes, then they're the villains. Peptides, weighted vest, creatine for women, the noise never ends. So how do we know what actually works? I am Juliet Hahn, and this is Don't Die Curious. In every episode, I sit down with doctors, innovators, and everyday legends to separate the facts from the hype and uncover what really sharpens the mind, strengthens the body, and fuels the spirit. Stay curious. One good question can change your life forever. Hello, welcome back to Don't Die Curious. This is Juliet Hahn, and I'm here with Dr. Randall Craft. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. So Dr. Craft is part of Craft MD. He created it, and I cannot wait till we dive into his story, but you can follow him because he does tons of really fun social media, but also educational, which is always really, really helpful in the space that he is. He's in the aesthetic space, and there's always questions that we have. So it's Dr.Randall.Craft with a C, and you can also find him at Craft MD, and they're out of Arizona. Is it Phoenix? Scottsdale? Where?
No, it's like, right on the border. I think like I'm 3 blocks from the Scottsdale border. So whatever you want to call it. Yes.
Okay, yeah.
I'm in the heart of it all.
In the heart of it all. Exactly.
Yeah.
So Dr. Craft, we connected because you actually have used one of our products. Well, you have very big knowledge in the kind of ECM multi-tissue platform, kind of extracellular matrix space. And so we connected at a conference, and then you and I kind of had a little conversation a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And you touched on a couple things that I was like, oh, I need to know more, and I'm not going to ask any more questions. But you are Harvard trained.
Yes.
You are a very intelligent man, and my listeners know that I think is great. But those kind of stories don't always, I don't want to say impress because that's not the word. That's not a nice word, but I think it's great when people have the intelligence that they can go through school like that. But because of my dyslexia, I hated school. So I like to connect with people on kind of their grittiness and their depths of their story and where they really got messy and then became these really incredible people. So I'm going to take it to you. I want to know a little bit about where you grew up, and then we're going to go from there.
Sure. So, interesting story. They, people always say, oh, it's like the J.D. Vance story, but I'm older than him. So I call it my story, not his. I've got a couple years on him, I think. So my family's all from Eastern Appalachia, Kentucky, like kind of the same area that J.D. Vance was from. My grandparents were coal miners. My parents had me when they were teenagers. I have an older brother. Do the math on that. I mean, my grandma had my dad, I think, when she was 13 or 14, because that was what you did in Appalachia. And so they they migrated Greeks Arrest style, like as opportunities were not just there in Eastern Kentucky, to Ohio, as the Ford plant that was opening up for a lot of good jobs on the manufacturing line, which is where my dad got a job and I grew up. So no one in my family had ever gone to college. Like college was not on my radar. Education was not an expectation that was ever put on me. And I don't want to say my parents didn't encourage me because that's not fair. They just didn't know what to encourage, it just wasn't part of their world. So it just never came up. And so I think when I graduated from high school, my parents were like, why are you giving a speech? I'm like, because I'm the valedictorian. They're like, oh, what's that? And I had seen the movie. I think it was, my mom used to keep me up at night watching movies with her. My dad worked a late shift, and we had watched St. Elmo's Fire, which was based at Georgetown. And I'm like, oh, that's where smart people go to school. And so it's the only college I applied to. I had no idea how hard it was to get into because I had no concept of anything like that. I got into Georgetown early, so that's where I went. And then from there, I went to Oxford and did, an MST in English literature there. And then I went to the, Ohio State for medical school, the Mayo Clinic for general surgery, Harvard for plastic surgery, and the University of Melbourne. Lived there for a year as well to do microsurgery. And so I just had a life. And I was just so fortunate and lucky because it was a life by all rights I never should have had. But that's the great thing about where we live and in this time is that you can have that. You can have that life. And I just feel so just so lucky to just been a part of all of that.
And this is where when I was coming up with this podcast, and I am a very curious person, and I do believe curiosity is what drives us and actually makes us do big things when we have curiosity and follow that. So you clearly had curiosity of being like, well, I wonder what's there. Even if it wasn't something that in like now that you can think back, but like at the time, it wasn't that you were like, oh, wait, what is this over here? But clearly it was, right? It's like, well, what is this world? Like, I know this world because this is what I'm living in. And I'm kind of curious of what's over here. So I'm going to go for it. So I know when we touched, you said the thing that was really difficult at Georgetown for you. If you can kind of touch upon where you grew up, the people around you, and then going to Georgetown, where that is a very different mix of people.
Very different. There were people who I think literal royalty. I think there was some European royal family who was my classmate, and just people who just lived an incredible life of wealth and exposure, and not better or worse people. They just had so much more opportunity to experience things in life that never occurred to me. When I went there, I'd never been on an airplane, so I had just my world was so much smaller than that. And learning how to talk was the hardest part, because just my life experiences and the way I related to people were so different. And I remember this conversation I had with someone, and they said, what are you doing here? And it wasn't in a supportive, congrats kind of way. It's do you belong here? Which, and in some circumstances that can kind of shut you down. You can start to plant that seed of self-doubt, and you're like, you know what? I don't belong here. I am way out of my depth. I never took SAT prep courses, and I didn't go to a prep school or boarding school. And then I found out that I was just as good, if not better. I mean, I worked harder, and because I had to, but also when that first, grades came out, and I had a 4.0, and these people who went to all these prep schools and everything else and not in public school, weren't doing as well as me. And I was kind of screw you. It's, you can have that from within, even if it's not handed to you. And it's not, trust me, it was not easy. But it goes back to that as curiosity is what could this life be like? And I can work for this and earn this for myself. And that's actually how I ended up going to Oxford is I've never been to another country. And I was you know what? I wonder what it'd be like to live in another country. So I applied and I got in. And I went to Oxford, and it was one of the most life-changing years I've ever had. Just look, England's not a dramatically different culture than us. It's not I was kind of pushing the envelope with that. But for me, it was, right. I might as well have been on the moon for as far as I was concerned. And I had a scholarship. And so I took the money from the meal plan and saved it up and then traveled the world. I went to India and backpacked through all of India, went up north, went to Kathmandu. I went to Everest Base Camp and almost died because I had Asics sneakers on because I didn't know that that's not something you could do.
Right. But, Dr. Craft, one of the things that I think is so where it's interesting as we raise kids and we do different things, to think, okay, a lot of people that I know maybe had a life and then they raised their kids in a little different life, or they kind of are raising the kids the same way that they grew up, right? Yeah. My husband and I are a little different. My husband grew up in the Bronx, working class family. I grew up in a pretty well, and the Bronx in the area he lived was actually really nice. I thought it was wall ball and drugs, and it was the nicest, sweetest area. I was oh, I didn't realize that this is parts of it. It wasn't Jenny from the Block Bronx. It was a different kind of Bronx.
Which was fabulous though.
Totally. And then where I grew up, I grew up in an affluent area, but a single mom. My parents were in my life, but they weren't together. And there was 5 of us. So there was, some financial struggles that we didn't know about until later. But now that I look back, I'm oh yeah. And so raising our kids where we have done well and we have done it different, but kind of going back to some of the stuff that gave us grit, we want to make sure that they still have it. So it's it doesn't matter how much money mom and dad have, you will get a summer job. You will do these different things because it's what gets you by in life, because life is not easy. And it doesn't matter if you have an easy childhood, there's going to be stuff. So one of the things that I love about your story, and I want to ask you, so some of the kids that you went to school with, they had pressure, right? It was they were expected to go to Georgetown. And if they didn't get a certain grade point average or certain SATs, they weren't going to get into Georgetown. So as a young kid, right, they had this pressure of this is what I have to do because I have to follow in these footsteps, or this is the pressure my parents are doing. Do you think that, because clearly you were self-motivated to do it yourself, but not really because it was like what you were chasing. It was like, oh, well, this is what I'm good at. Do you think that some of your success was because you didn't internally have that same anxiety that others, or that same like pressure that others did? Can you take us through that a little bit?
That's a great point. There certainly was no external expectation. Actually, my parents were the opposite. Once they found out kind of like, oh shit, like what I was doing in like this environment that I was going into, they kind of went the opposite ways. Like, don't stress yourself out. Don't like try to be the best. Don't try to do these things because, well, I don't want to say that they doubted me. They just had no context. And so they knew I was going to this like high pressure school with this reputation, and they didn't want me to like fail, not because they didn't think I could succeed, just because I didn't have those advantages, and they didn't want me to put a pressure on myself.
Right.
And so they were the opposite. They were trying to like tamp down the expectations, just because they didn't want me to burn out or like, crash and burn or what, just being protective parents. But it came from within, and it wasn't that I ever thought, growing up in the 90s, back then, like it wasn't all over TV. Like I just to get real personal, because that's what we're here to do, that you were gay, or like, and because back then this was not something that was okay or acceptable or that you were seeing on TV. Pretty much everyone was dying of AIDS, and you were going to be discriminated against, and your life was going to be a living hell. Right. And so I knew that I didn't know it consciously, but part of me knew that I had to make a different world and environment for myself. I don't want to say in order to survive, but kind of in order to survive.
Yeah.
And that didn't like come up until much later in college, but I knew I had to change my world experience and view. And then that's why I love the title of your podcast. A lot of it was just curiosity. Like, yes, I was interested in medicine because I had some medical issues as a child and was in the hospital. But when I went to Oxford, it was to study English literature. And actually, it was Milton and Paradise Lost. And one of the things I tell the story to my son now, who's 5, is I have this half sleeve tattoo on my arm, which a lot of surgeons don't have because, this day and age is more common. But when I got it, it was considered kind of like, white trashy things to do. And at Mayo, you weren't allowed to have tattoos like at all.
Wow.
And it's from Paradise Lost. And it's when, for lack of a better description, it's from when Satan gets kicked out of heaven and falls to earth. It has nothing to do with the religion part of it at all, but it has to do with what happens when he falls. He stands up and says to everyone, if you don't get up now, once you're knocked down, you're down forever. So if you get knocked down, stand up, whatever that situation is, because if you don't stand up now, you never will again. So that's why I chose that tattoo for my arm. It has nothing to do with religion. Although I do love the iconography and the art of it, it's not about religion to me. It's more about the message of like, you are going to get knocked down in life. You probably many, many times. And there have been points in my life where I felt like, shit, this was a big one. Like, I don't know if I can recover from whatever circumstance, personal or professional it is. But if you don't get up right away, then you might not. So that's why I chose this as a tattoo to put on my arm. And I like to tell my son the story behind that, because I think it's one of the most important life lessons you can learn.
Right. And it is. Yeah. And the fact, and I thank you for sharing that, because I think it's so important. We all as humans have that either an internal push or, there's people pushing you from the outside, and that push from the outside to me is not always healthy. But my kids, I have 3 teenagers, and we'll talk about it. They're like, you guys were strict. You had expectations of us when we were little. And then it was like, okay, now it's your turn. Like, you guys got to step up. I'm not going to hover over you. I did my job as a parent when you guys were little. And now I just expect you, to kind of fall into place and do the right thing because that's what we taught you. But I'm not going to put pressure on you. If you don't have that pressure on yourself, that you have to pull it from within, because I can't be around you all the time. Yeah. So and where we are, it's like everyone does the SAT, tutoring. They do this tutoring, they do that tutoring, and they throw it down these kids' throats, and kids are so stressed out. And I'll say to my kids, like, okay, you know what? If you want to get a tutor, that's great. But if you also are like, nah, and I've had some friends who are like, well, no, you have to push them, or because they don't know they're teenagers. And there is a little bit of a line there for that. Yeah. It's like, you can give direction without being like, this is what you have to do. I really teach my kids to internally be like, what feels right and what doesn't feel right. And that's not an easy thing to do, but having that self-awareness. And so I think curiosity and self-awareness are two of the most amazing things that a person can have to really get to them to that next level.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you early on had this beautiful self-awareness, even though you maybe didn't know where it was, but you were like, okay, I feel different. I want something different. And I'm going to kind of be curious and go down different paths to see what makes me excited. Right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, please talk on that.
Oh, no, well, here's the other corollary to curiosity. And like, it's just good old fashioned damn hard work. I mean, like, you have to put in the work to make that happen. And everyone had said like, oh, he's so smart. It comes easy for him. I'm like, not always. Like, I worked harder than everyone else on either side of me, because I didn't have like the prep courses and all the other kind of just benefits that they had. Like, look, I'm not a dumb guy. I'm not saying like, obviously there was some innate talent there that I had to work with, but it mostly was just working harder than everyone else around you, not to prove it to them, because I didn't really care. I mean, I didn't really care what they said. Like, that really wasn't the point. It was to prove it to myself. And it's because I knew what I wanted my life to be. And I was very fortunate to have that insight at such a young age and to know that grit and hard work is what it took to get there. And then talking about kids, like I started on the late side on the parenting thing. So my son's only just about to turn 5 and I'm 49. So like I'm an older parent, which is great because I don't think I would have been ready for it at any other point in my life to truly be as involved as I am now. And even now, like, still 4, he's like, Dad, how can I earn that? Like, so he has that already that I've taught him that, like, if you want these things, like, you have to earn them. And for him, it's like, I want to earn this Lego figurine. Like, how do I earn that? So that at least it kind of like starts that conversation with him of like, ain't no one handing you anything in this life. And like, and if it is, it's temporary at most for most people, having to kind of have that internal grit. And I don't know if you can teach it, but I'm sure trying, but you can at least model it to the best that you can. But of everything I've done, like, this has been what I've been most proud of, is being a dad. I'm not gonna cry, but
I hear it.
Every other thing that I've accomplished, like, doesn't really compare to that, like, by far, hands down.
To raising a human, I'd say the same thing. It is to see that you've created something, whether you had whether adopted anything, but to have like someone that is a part of your life that you can shape. I mean, we joke, my oldest is going to be a sophomore in college. So he just finished his freshman year. Dyslexic, fractured both sides of his pelvis, always wanted to play soccer, was out a year and a half, worked himself up to be able to get recruited Division II. Like, this kid has grit. He knows what it is. He knows. And it's fascinating watching, but we would always laugh. And I would say, when you were little, like, you were complicated, and I'm going to curse on this, but I could have fucked you. I could have fucked you up. I could have fucked you up if I like fell into some of your neuroses. Like, I knew that, okay, oh wow, he's a little, okay. You're good. Let's go. Let's run. He was nervous to do things. And now I know it's because the way his brain worked. He didn't know, wait, I don't understand this. So I don't want to jump in. And so I would have to like encourage him. So I was hard on him. Like, okay, you count to 5. I know you said you wanted to do this. I'm going to count to 5. And I would have parents being like, God, you're so hard. Shouldn't you just, and I'm like, no, because he is going to have self-confidence because I'm going to show him he can do it. If I know it's something he can't do, I'm not going to push him. But
100%.
if I know, and I would like surfing, karate, all of these different things, climbing things, it would always be like, you said you wanted to do it. And now today he'll say like, thank God, could you? And I was like, oh, you would have been a little weirdo. You would have been a little neurotic weirdo.
Yeah. 100%. And being that kind of coach guy thing, again, it's just been the greatest role of my life. Because I had to tell you, part of the hardest thing about coming out as gay back in the 90s is I kind of just accepted that I would never be a father because that just wasn't part of, the expected reality.
Right.
That just wasn't part of life. And so I never thought I'd be a dad. And to have that, like, it's by far the best thing I've ever done. Like, I would give back everything else and all the other like degrees and experiences and all that. It has been by far the best thing I've ever done. But what you don't anticipate and what I didn't realize is the constant fucking worry. Like, I worry about him all the time.
And it never stops.
In benign situations where I shouldn't, but like that worry is like constantly there. It's great and it's terrible at the same time. And that I don't think anyone, or at least no one warned me about, that it's just a constant.
And it never ends. It never ends. And it's interesting because, as I said, he's a freshman. I mean, just finished freshman year. And I had a really hard time with him going. And it wasn't because I was worried that he wasn't going to succeed. I was like, this kid's going to run the world. Like he is, I have no worry there. It was just that I was going to miss his presence, miss his smile, miss his smell, miss his energy around me. And and then also the next stage, and you'll go through it when they get into kindergarten and the next stages, because when we and I feel like you're similar to me, like when you love deep. And when I love deep. And when you're my people, you are my people. And I 100%. Want to be there. And I know I'm not a helicopter. I will not manage things but I am there. You need me. And all of a sudden it's almost like Flash, if they need me, I'm there. What do you guys need? And I am full on hands-on protective mode. Let's do a teaching moment here. And it's sometimes my kids now will be they'll be okay, we don't need you because Jesus, it's comes with a lot. It's but that is. And so there's times where you have to pull back because it's okay, I need them to fall on their face, right? I need them to fail. And it's really hard as a parent to watch that, but it's also, what you had to go through to get where you are. I know what I had to go through to get where I am. It's those messy, gritty parts that make us strong and interesting people. So it is this really weird, okay, you can't have that silver spoon because we don't want you to be that guy. Yeah. But I want you to know that it will be there if there's certain, it's this really interesting balancing act.
Yeah, totally. So I had never been on a plane until I was in my 20s. My kid's been on I don't know what to say. He's been a lot. And I've exposed him to a lot, everything I never did. And he's in preschool, he's just turning 5 and he's a summer boy. And so there's always that kind of line.
I have summer
back, So I actually made the choice of holding my son back a year for another year of pre-K. And, in my heart, I truly believe it was the right thing for him. But I would be lying if the thought has not popped in my head that says that means I keep him for another year. And that thought had 100% entered my mind more than once when my calculus, I get him before I have to let him go for another year, which is terrible. It's terrible to make that a rationale, but it honestly was part of my decision. It was the right thing. Yes, it was the right thing for him, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't think about that all the time.
Dr. Craft, I have 3 that did pre-K. Yeah. Now, my oldest is dyslexic, so again, it was the right thing, but I have June, July, and then September. So the 2 boys. Yeah. And we were lucky where we were in Connecticut. Everyone really did that. It was a pre-K thing because of the way that cutoffs were. But so my 18-year-old is going to be a senior in high school. My 20-year-old is a sophomore in college. And then my daughter, who's the youngest, she'll be 16 as a sophomore. But you know what? She probably would have, the boys, they actually needed that time, especially because of the dyslexia. But it's really funny because they'll be 18. He's I'm an adult and I'm in high school. Because in New York, we moved then to New York where everyone's young. So we're a whole year. Connecticut, it was the same. But again, they're not if they were 6'8" and giants and they look, it kind of meshed in and fills in. And so you did exactly the right thing. But that was the one thing I would say. I'd be I get them for an extra year.
No, it was the first thought in my mind. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't. And I actually still am super happy about that. My son is in the 99% for height, so he will be a giant.
That's all right.
I'm fine with that.
That's fine.
But you know what? The reality is I know my kid and I know he's a little shy and emotionally he's not the most outgoing. He's not that first person to reach that milestone. Remember when I was potty training him is dude, what? You seem behind the 8 ball. What's up? But he was late, but then overnight it was just done. There wasn't this, he just did that. And I didn't want that slide to hold him back. I'm giving this all justification for when to keep him home for a year. We're just going to entertain that.
But it's anyway, great.
It is great. And I'm actually very happy that it's happening. So yes, all those.
Yes. Things. No, I love that. So clearly we can talk about our kids all day. But that is kids' curiosity is one of my favorite things. So my friends used to be God, your kids ask so many questions. And I was yes. And I love it. And I love questions. I love when they ask questions. I love the curiosity. I love to see their way their brain works. And so all my friends would send just go call Juliet and ask her. I don't know. And so all my friends' kids would call me and be or whenever I was there, they would send, just go talk to Juliet. She'll answer all your questions. There's the curiosity of a child that I think is the most beautiful thing. And I don't think us as adults allow them to do that. We don't allow them to be seen and heard. And I would always when I raised my kids, I would always ask them, hey, this is we're going to have this kind of family discussion and we might not go with what you see and feel, but I want to know what you see and feel. I want to know what your, thoughts are in this, or let's discuss this, challenge, or discuss this. And I think there's so much in a child that sometimes they really see things differently than we as adults, and what they see is beneficial for us and how things should be run, because they don't have all the stress and the cloudedness, and they can see things so clear. My middle son was that, for like, he used to be like, "Mommy, did you ever think of this?" And I'd be like, "Oh my God, you're keeping me straight. Oh, my little love." Like, he would say, "Why don't you do this instead of that?" And I was like, "Yes, let's do that." And there, there's so many parents that, and again, when you're busy and you're running and you're doing all these things, it's hard, right? It's hard to pause and be like, okay, let's sit and have the discussion. But I think the more that we can do that as adults and parents, I think the better and more self-confident our kids will be, and then just be better humans. So I love that you're having that.
And I love when you said that, about the curiosity. And the thing I think is so magical about kids, I've noticed in my son, is that it's curiosity without shame or embarrassment.
Yes.
Because as adults, like, we're in these situations where, like, we don't ask the most basic things because we're embarrassed that we don't know at this stage in life. And, like, you're ashamed that, like, oh my God, do I not really know that? Like, for me, I can do some I did 9 years of surgery residency and fellowship. I can do some incredibly technical, crazy things, but I don't know how to change the oil in my car. And I'm embarrassed to bring that up. I don't know how to do that. It had come up, and, like, there was something else stupid with my car, and I had to ask actually my anesthesiologist. I'm like, dude, like, I actually don't know how to do that. Like, some basic stupid life skill, because I was so focused on my own little minutia, like, high technical thing. Whereas with my son, it's just like whatever, he's just like, "Hey, Daddy," and then, like, it's just this constant stream. And my answer is always yes. Like, what can we talk about? And that is never shutting that conversation down, because I think we lose that. But hence the don't die curious. Like, sometimes shame just fucks things up. Like, shame and embarrassment that you not be vulnerable, and losing that vulnerability is like where we all get in these kind of like isolated little pockets because we're afraid to be that anymore. Whereas kids don't.
100%. Amen. And education shuts that down for a lot of us.
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't allowed to ask the questions. The way my brain worked, I learned so differently, and I needed answers in a different way. But when you're the kid that asked the questions, and then finally you're the annoying kid, and then other people are like, "You don't know that," then you stop, and then you just stop learning. When you stop being curious is when you stop learning. And that's why I wanted to do this podcast, because I am, working for FetTech and Rayagel and all of this new world. I have so many questions, and I'm like, I'm going to ask all these questions, because these are the questions I wasn't allowed to ask in biology, and I wasn't allowed to do that because I was the annoying girl that was like, "Oh my God, why can't she get it?" And so I love that you said that, because that's exactly what it is. When questions keep us, knowledge is power. And when we have that power, we become better humans. What is your son's name?
His name is technically Emmett J.U., but he goes by MJ. He's always gone by MJ. He wouldn't, if you say Emmett in a room, he wouldn't answer to
I love that.
He's always gone by MJ. Emmett was my grandfather's name, and J.U. was his other grandfather's name, was his other dad. And I never knew it's funny, like, I never knew my grandfather Emmett. He died. He was a coal miner, and he died when I was very young. But he was an artist, and that's another thing that I am gifted with, is I can draw very well. And so I always had this like kind of like fantasized connection to this part of my past, to someone who was, kind of may have been like me. So that's why I kind of want to pass that name down.
Yeah.
It's a curiosity about someone that I'll never know. And so sometimes you just fill in those gaps to kind of explain your own kind of origin story and all that other stuff. But one thing that you'd said before I just want to touch on is about, like, the kid in the class and being shut down, is like, the insidious part is, like, most of the time, like, it's your peers as much as a teacher. Like, it's not necessarily an educator, it's a teacher. It's the other people around you who also may not know shit. It becomes a cultural norm to pretend like you do, because you don't want to speak up and be the one that doesn't know. And it becomes like some kind of Lord of the Flies shit where, like, everyone reinforces that. Which is why conversations like this are so important, of like, I don't know that. Let's talk about it, Yes.
And parenthood all around. Like, one of the things that I think that I love that you said, but this is what I get so fascinated. So you have like the science and math brain, and then you have this creative brain. And so that to me is so, just knowing my dyslexia and how I learn, I am like a master at I shouldn't say, I'm a master of curiosity of how the brain works and how people learn and how they have these really interesting parts of them, because being an artist is one of I hardly control a stick figure. Like I'm creative in my communications. Like when I played sports, I was creative on the athletic field, but drawing is what I always thought was creative. So I was always like, oh, I'm not creative, until later in life, which is just crazy because I'm so creative, but in a different way. So when I find people that draw, one of my best friends was an artist, and it fascinates me. And so I would love to know a little bit about, like, when did you realize that you were, so talented in art, but then also like the sciences, like you can use both sides, like you have strong both sides of your brain.
It's kind of weird because like people know me now as like surgeon, scientist, I published 30 some articles, like very like kind of nerdy science. But when I was a kid, that was what I was known for. Like I was known as like an artist. Like that was kind of, and it's weird because like, I'm going to preface this by saying that I am utterly fucking tone deaf. Like you can sing 5 different notes. It's all the same note to me. And everyone's like, that's pitch is high or low. I'm like, those words make no sense to me. Like that,
I love
all
that.
in my brain, that none of those things matter to me. But I can see something like a piece of art and I can replicate it to the millimeter, or like create like images from my brain and just like translate them on the page. And I've always been able to do that since I was a little kid. And it's weird because I don't think about it. I can't teach it because I don't know how I do it. Like, it's just something that I've always been able to do. And it's weird because I have like 2 cousins and an uncle who can all do the same thing. Like, I don't know, it's all on the same side of the family. I don't know what gene or like brain thing it is, but like, it was always just like kind of literally just a gift that I had. And like with my son, he used to get frustrated because we would draw. I remember when he first got into cars, like the movie cars, and he wanted to draw with me. And I drew like a fucking photorealistic Lightning McQueen. I mean, that shit could have been in Pixar. And he looked at me and he's like, no. He's like, you got. Anyway, I should have toned it down a little bit. He got a little frustrated with like,
so funny.
But now every day that I pack his lunch, like he makes requests. He's like, I want, Sonic celebrating a birthday. So every night I draw him a napkin, whatever it is at a request. Oh. So he opens up his lunch, and like some of the other parents are like, you need to stop that shit because he shows all his friends, and like his teachers were like keeping it, like, and they were keeping a scrapbook of it. I'm like, no, that's literally his napkin. Like he doesn't otherwise have a napkin. Like he's going to wipe his face and throw it away. I'm like, yeah, that's what it's for.
Okay, so I have so many questions. So do you think though, because I've actually interviewed a couple different plastic surgeons that also are artists, like that have that mind. Is that one of the things like in your, and I'm going to try to preface this because I'll have people like, well, what do you see that you're dyslexic? I'm like, I don't know what you see. So how can I explain what I see? I don't, like, yes, my B's and D's are flipped, but that's like such a small part of dyslexia. Like, and not everyone has that. But I find it so fascinating do you think, if you could like explain why you went into plastic surgery, do you think it's some of that art? Like you have that eye where you can see, that's why you're so successful, in my opinion, because you can see kind of lines and shapes and where things go. And like, I feel like plastic surgeons, if we actually broke it down, there's a very high % that are very artistic and they see differently.
100%. And I had no insider knowledge of that when I kind of went into, so I think I touched on it before, is like I was in the hospital as a kid, and I had this weird genetic, probably because of the appellation inbreeding, who knows. I have an allergy to anesthesia, so I essentially had cardiac arrest during emergency surgery, and I was in the ICU for 8 weeks, and like it was pretty traumatic as a kid because I remember back then, they would like strap you down to these procedure boards and just I had a lot of invasive things done, because I was in kidney failure and like had an arrest, so like. That's kind
scary.
of what was the impetus to go to medical school to begin with. And then I thought like, I'm going to be a pediatrician because I was sick as a kid. Right. And then I get into all the rotations of med school and I'm like, oh no, this sucks. Like these parents are terrible. Like, no, like this is awful. Like, no, like, and then like internal medicine, I'm like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And then like, oh no, this is awful too. Like you don't fix anything. Like all you do is talk about things all day. Like you don't actually do anything. And this isn't about me or bragging, but like I honored or got highest grades in like every single one of those rotations. So like I could have done whatever I wanted. And I saved surgery for last because I'm like, no, those guys are dicks. They're all jocks. There's no way in hell I'm ever doing that. Like, so I made it dead last. And then I'm like, oh, these are my people. And then plastic surgery was like the same thing. Like even now when I do a case, like, plastic surgeons draw all these patterns and stuff for the things they do. And like my team always, I have this trick, where I'll draw it on both sides and then they measure it and it's exactly symmetric to the millimeter without ever measuring anything.
Cool. Oh my God, that's
like,
so fascinating.
And they're like, yeah, we get it. We see it every day. Like, move on. I'm like, no. Anyway, so I can't do that party trick anymore, but 100% yes. So like when I'm doing like a face or a breast or any part of the body for anyone, like I have that vision in my mind and like, I don't know how to quantify it, but I just see the symmetry. And so for me, like I literally am able to make it like I would be able to draw it. And it just ended up being such a gift that I fell into that. Well, not fell, but like that my life kind of led into that because it is what I do for a living. And it is how I ended up, I started out in the reconstructive space, and that's when I was using ACell because I kind of evolved as ACell did to Radiogel. I did all reconstruction. And eventually I always kind of led back into the aesthetic part of it. And it now feels like I'm where I belong. And it's exactly because of that. It's just how my brain works.
Yeah. And it's your talent. And so I love something that you didn't do even on purpose, but it was like you led kind of with those breadcrumbs, like, right, where do I feel good? What is matching up? So I find that so fascinating because now I want to do like a study of like plastic surgeons and like their creative, how many of them have this deep creativity.
A high portion, 100%. I would totally agree with that.
I mean, I think it's so fascinating because I remember the first couple that I talked to and I was like, oh, that's so interesting. And then it just makes sense if you think about it because you have an eye to be able to say, oh, okay, this is what you want, especially if you have a patient that comes in and says, these are the things that I would like to work on or change or do whatever, you can actually visualize it in your face. And really, if we can visualize things, that's how I learn. So like, that's why school was hard for me because the way the teacher was speaking, I never could connect those dots to be able to visualize it. But then the second something is explained in a different way, I'm like, oh, I get it. Right. So it's like not an intelligence thing. Sometimes it's just like literally the way things are explained and the way your brain processes it and sees it.
That had to inform your parenting so much, like to be able to stop and have the insight to know that the problem may not be them. It's how I'm trying to approach it with them. Because so few people have that insight in this world for like everything, so many things right now. Like maybe the problem's me. And most people in authority, which is parents we are, or educators who are in authority, don't take that beat to think about that. We always externalize that problem to someone else.
No, totally. And because even as a kid, I remember trying to like explain things of like, I had something that I wanted to like discuss, but I couldn't get it out in the correct way, or someone didn't understand and I had to like change the way. There was a lot of times, but that always, especially when I went into advertising sales into business, I realized okay, I have to keep explaining myself. So there's like a disconnect. This is not where I'm supposed to be, right? This is not where I'm supposed to be. So yes, definitely with kids, it was, okay, I need to readjust. If they're not getting it, I need to readjust how I'm explaining it. And there's so much with communications. I mean, one of the things that I really, and again, I'm not like boosting myself up, but what I am really good at is communication. Well, people say like, oh, you're a great communicator. And I'm like, thank you. But it really is how the person interpreting it. If I am not getting my message across, I'm not a good communicator. I can sound like I'm a great communicator. You can be on stage. And I think so many people in authority, right? You're on stage and you sound great and but people walk away like, well, that doesn't make sense. Someone has to understand it. And then that's where it is a good communications. It's like, oh, I get that. So, and really in the work that you're doing, right? I mean, the same thing. It's like you have to connect those two things. And it really is, it's like this beautiful dance. Like we have to kind of be like, okay, we're going over here. Now we have to bring it back here to be able to get that message across. And as you said, kids really help us be able to do that in a different way. I mean, I think as parents, when people are parents and communicating with little ones and as they grow and you have to change your message and how you approach it, but you talking to your patients and expressing like, okay, this is what I see. I hear what you're saying, and this is what I'm hearing. I'm going to speak it back to you to make sure we're on the same page, right? Because you could be hearing something your patient's saying, and you might be like, oh, wait, they didn't need their breast lifted, or they didn't want their breast lifted. They just didn't like this here. And now we didn't have the correct communication, and now they're not happy. You have to be the listener and the communicator.
And here's something I think you and I both have in common, just because how easily we talk to one another and like how that flow is that like people, like I get that feedback from my patients all the time. Like, you talk to me like a real person, and that's that's why we're going with you. I'm like, well, how the fuck else are people talking to you? And then you like, well, what are other people doing? And then you see it, and you're like, oh, yeah. And that, above anything else, what I might be able to do is probably I consider the best gift that I've had is being able to talk to someone like a real person, no matter where they are in life or how they relate to me or don't relate to me, and having those conversations. And I also think, in my opinion, it's one of the things that we are so sorely missing, and that frightens the shit out of me with social media and my kid about it's bad now. And I just see, for kids growing up in this disconnected world where everything is curated online and not real, it scares me where that's going to go next, because it's not great right now either.
Right.
Yeah.
No, and it's such a true point, because you and I get a lot of times when people say, "Oh, you're just so real," and I'm like, I don't really know what that means. This it's who I am. Like I can, but I think what the similarities with both of us are, it doesn't matter if you're a janitor or a president. If you're a good person, I like you and I want to have a conversation with you. If you're a dick or a douche, I don't care who you are. I don't want to have a conversation with you, and I don't want to be in your presence for much longer. Right. If you make me feel less than, or you think that you're better because your ego and all these things. And in the medical world, there's a lot of that, right? These egos. In the educational world, there's a lot of egos. There's a lot of egos out there, but those egos, and this is what I always say, and this is why I know how to, I feel like I know how to navigate. Those egos are really because the person's insecure. Yeah. And it has nothing to do with me. And even when I was little, I was always just really good at being like, okay, that person, I don't know what's wrong with them, but it's because of them. It's nothing to do with me. And I've always been able to be, and I feel like that's some of the reasons why I always have had a really good self-identity and a self-confidence, because it's like, if they're in a bad mood or a teacher yells or they say this, or, my boss is doing this, it's not because they're pissed at me. It's because they have their own issues and it's something that they're working on. And I think that's something that comes across very much with you, is that you talk to people how you would want to be talked to and how you would want to be treated. Yeah.
Just like a normal person. Now,
exactly.
This is one area that I struggle, and I don't know, somewhere on the spectrum of that, and this isn't about me, but again, it's just the environment that I was in. I trained at the Mayo Clinic and Mass General at Harvard. So in surgery. Talk about some egos. I mean, they're in the hierarchy. It's like the military. One thing that I have to admit, if I had to say one thing I struggled with during training, it wasn't the academics or my grades or publication, blah, 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 blah. I think I sometimes take the speak truth to power a step too far. So if I see just someone who's just acting in an utterly unacceptable way, be them a chairman of a department, whatever their role is, I will call that out. And it's been a tough lesson to learn as an adult that system is not designed for that, especially in something so hierarchical as that. It doesn't go over well, but at the same time, I've rarely regretted it, even if it doesn't go over well. But it's not an easy thing to do. And I don't say that as and I'm not making this point to say, oh, I'm so brave to do this. It's more that I don't have the fucking control to have the common sense to be like, maybe I should not call this person out for that.
But it's hard not to.
It's hard not to. It's hard for me not to.
But it's hard it's hard for me not to. Even in education, I do a lot of stuff in the dyslexic world, helping parents and stuff, and working with educators. And it there will be times where I will say, I'm calling you on your bullshit. Stop talking like you're trying to pretend, you're trying to trick those parents into doing something. Why? Don't stop it. Yeah. No one likes that. And it is right. You could do it. And because that's one of the things, people that are passive aggressive, I hate that. If it just, you got to say it. So sometimes I think I hear you. Sometimes it's not worth it because some people just also don't get it. And I think as I've grown older, there's times where it's it's not even worth it. That person doesn't even deserve my breath. But there's other times where I have to do it. But I also know sometimes I'm doing it not in a healthy way. I'm doing it more like, listen, I hated how you made me feel back then. So I'm going to make you feel that way, but it's not even has to do with that person. So then I double check myself. Like, why did I need to kind of talk to that individual or call them out? And so it is this fine line and dance though.
Yeah, and I love how you brought that up because it's the motivation of it. Like, yes, I can be direct, and there is a role for direct, but I love that how you brought that up. Like, what is it serving in this particular moment or situation? Like, is it for the good of me or someone else, or is it just because I need to be direct and like call out the behavior? Yeah. And maybe it's not the best thing. This is going to be a growth. This is like therapy. I love it.
That is why I love what I do, because it's having these back and forth conversations. Yeah. And it's my favorite thing to kind of, I think as we grow, it is these, we can check ourselves and each other. And that's why I love also working for the company, because it is one of the things that the group we do, we will say, hey, we're, coming across this, let's dive into it. And it's as growing as humans, and then us being able to be the parents to these children that we can say, hey, there's such a, and then teach them so they don't have to kind of go through some of the same, same learning experiences, even though we all know that you have to. Going through those experiences, you have to, but kind of having more self-awareness. So yes, no, I love that. But that's how I kind of sometimes, as I've gotten older, I've gotten less reactive. Because trust me, I would rip teachers' faces off. I would be like, you do what I am asking and you won't see me. You don't do what I'm asking. And I will literally rip your face off. And they'd be like, oh my God. And I'm like, oh, it probably wasn't the best. They're like, that teacher is, married to the principal. And then that principal is the head of the, the police department. Right. And I'm like, I didn't realize that family was all together. Oh shit. Okay, well, maybe I need to kind of check myself, and it's an experience I went through as a kid that I'm not going to want someone else to, and I'm actually doing it out of not a healthy space. And I need to think about that and how to approach it as a healthy space, because the way I approached it is not getting anyone anywhere. And now I'm fired up.
Yeah. What are you solving for? Other than just like getting, it's like you're in my head. Yes. In my heart. So I never asked you this because, like, if I meet you on the street, I'm thinking like life coach guru, like I'm the board of Goop telling them how to like change their brand and like reach the world and everything. How did you get into this specific space that you are? Because I'm not guessing that if I'm meeting you off the bat. I'm just saying that.
Okay, I love that. This is actually really funny. So I started a podcast in 2019. I stayed home with my kids. I was very fortunate. I always wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. I babysat. I was a nanny, like kids. I love. And so I stayed home, fortunate enough to do it. And then we moved and my kids were older. I was teaching some fitness classes, in the town that we were. And I really didn't want to do that as we moved. And I was like, you know what? I want more. I just don't want to play tennis and drink wine. I'm competitive.
Well, you're great, by the way, but continue.
Right. Totally. And no, it doesn't no shade there, but I was like, exactly. But I am a very competitive person. I played college sports. And so not that I have to beat someone else, but I don't just play for fun. Like I need to be good and I need to win. I really like to win. So I'm just not one that goes out casually and does things. When I exercise, I'm very intentional. When I do things, I'm intentional. So I knew that playing tennis, I would have to take lessons. And I was like, it's going to take me away from being home with the kids. It's going to be not proactive. So I started a podcast really out of a creative rut that I didn't realize I was in. And then that really took off and, it became a story. It morphed into a storytelling consultant company. So a lot of my guests would say, I loved how I told my story. I've never felt so good after leaving a podcast. What did you do? And I would say, I asked you questions because I'm really good at reading people in that I can tell what excites people. I can hear the slightest tone, but this is all from being dyslexic, reading teachers, knowing what I needed to get out of. How can I do this? Yeah. So very well being like, okay, that person's tone. Nope. Don't do it then. Don't do it here. You can do it here. So I know how to pull the good parts of someone's story out and then also direct them really, so it makes it a good flowing conversation. So I started a storytelling consultant business out of that. But so Danielle Fetty, who's one of the co-founders, she and I actually went to high school together.
Shut up.
I swear. And
Yeah.
we played lacrosse, but I'm older and she's younger, but we were defenders and we were like the two that were on the circle. We played zone and our teams won like state champions. We came from a very dynamic area and we won everything. So she and I had this like beautiful connection on the field. We actually are both dyslexic. So we didn't realize like we could see the field differently than everyone else. So the way we worked together, we were like these like two, just one person in two bodies. So we were like, I'm here, you're there. Like we just really spoke to each other in a non-verbal way. We just knew where we were going. And so we were really dynamic. So we probably got back, but I was younger. So when I graduated, we probably lost touch. And then when I started that fitness stuff back in 2015, maybe a little bit before, we had reconnected. And she's like, oh, I see what you're doing. You're like working out with moms, asking me advice of like, hey, well, what are you doing? Because I know, you're athletics are important to you. Fitness is important. So we kind of stay connected that way. And then when Rayagel, really when FetTech, when their first product started doing well and they realized that there was the antiviral components when they were doing some of the studies, Danielle said, I want to hire you as a storytelling consultant. I just want to do like 8 or 9 sessions with you because I know I'm going to need to be really speaking. I'm probably going to be going on podcasts and I love your podcast and how you get people to tell their story. So I want to hire you. And I said, okay. So, and at first was like, no, you're my friend. I'm not going to charge you. She's like, no, I need this to be like a real business. Like I want that. So she hired me and probably, I would say like 8 or 9 months, she kept saying, we're going to work more together. I don't know what it is, but you're going to help me in something bigger. I just feel it. And I'm like, okay, laughing because I'm like, you're in biotech. Like I wasn't allowed to take chemistry. I was like the dumb girl. Like I was not allowed to take science because I was really severely could not take it. I didn't have the right teachers, but I was always curious about science and always loved science. But I am very, I work with like a naturopath. I do like biomagnetic stuff with doctors. I do homeopathy. I'm very, very into natural medicine. I think there's both, a space for both, but I'm way more on the other side. So I was also like, I don't even really know what you're doing, but kind of, but I don't even know if it would be a match. Right. And I have my own business now and I was doing work with the Sopel Foundation. I had a podcast with them. I also did a lot of stuff with the NFL Thread. So I was like, I had a pretty thriving business that was really blowing up. And Danielle said, okay, can we hire you as our chief communications officer? And I was like, what? I was like, I'm going to be a CCO. What are you talking about? I was like, this is so funny. She's like, we will. And told me the salary, told me the benefits. And I was like, oh, I need to pause. This is like real. So I talked to my husband. And I was like, it's going to be different because I'm not working for myself anymore. And so I started, it's 2 years. But so that first year, I literally went on every single one of the meetings. I went into every, spoke to the government, went on every science call because I am a sponge. And Danielle's like, you can learn anything. I need you to absorb everything. So I literally went on everything. I mean, I would be on calls with like triple PhDs and all these academics and then tons of doctors and high spaces, research people. And I would just sit and listen and ask questions sometimes not. Like later, maybe I would write it down and ask Clay, who's the other co-founder. And so it really got us ready for when we did the FDA clearance for Rayagel. I was like, oh, I can speak this. And I know this space. I know wound care now. I can do all of this. And so that's really how it started. And then I do still do the stuff with Sopel Foundation and I still have my podcast, but I did my first podcast about 3 months ago. I retired that and it was time. And then this really just kept speaking to me. And it is my gift. It really is connecting and speaking and getting people's stories out is really what I'm good. And I kept saying to Danielle, I know that there's more that I can do with the company through my gifts and through my strengths. Let's kind of see how it plays out. And so it was like, I think it's time that we also have a segment and do something, have it my own entity, but really, I want to talk about the longevity space and like what we can do to stay alive longer. And like these conversations are exactly what it is. It's about staying curious. It's about listening to your body. It's about, we don't want to be 98 and bedridden, right? We want to be 98 and moving or, 78, whatever your time is up, you want to live the best. And what do? It's the people we surround ourselves. It's using our brains and doing all these different things that we can with, nutrition and, again, intelligence and fitness and movement and all of the things that kind of make this life that makes it better. So that's really, that's where I am. And that's where it started.
It's such a crazy story and like so smart of her because you don't have storytellers in this space. You have number crunchers and data and scientists, and you don't have storytellers. And especially when you start to get in the aesthetic space, like when you're talking directly to consumers, patients, and all other things, like that's how we relate as human beings are stories. And like you putting up like, a fucking picture of an exosome, like no one gets that, like no one cares about that. But being able to tell stories in this space, I think that was such an incredibly distinct and smart move on their
100%. And that one of the things that Danielle and I said when she's like, I'm not in the aesthetic space at all. Like I've never really got facials. Like now I've done like some Botox and stuff, but I didn't before. And so it was like, I knew nothing about it. And she's like, yeah, but that's what I like. I want someone that has no knowledge of it that can ask those questions. Because what I said to her is I want to take this company and I want to be, it's not about what we can do, even though our product is incredible. It's about the story. It's about all of our stories and why you and Clay got into this and why you started it and all of these different things. So we are really, as a company, that is like something that we focus on. Like I really coached her on talking about the parts of her life that I know will connect with people. Someone like me that maybe is on social media and was like, what is this? Oh, I'm not going to go to a plastic surgeon and use that and spend money on something like that. But when you hear what it does, or you hear why Danielle and Clay made it, then that's when I stop and I'm like, oh, maybe I need to look into this. And those are the things why I've done whatever I've done with my dermatologist or a plastic surgeon. It's because there was a story behind it. And so that when I said that to Danielle, she was like, yes, that's exactly what I want. That's what I want, something different. And so that was literally her vision and so it's been really cool because Clay and Danielle both, like they appreciate, some of the things that I'm like, I need you guys to do this. I need you to just answer some questions. And then Jessica came on board and has that same insight as our clinical educator, but she has this whole storytelling thing with social media. So everything that I had said in the beginning, it's really funny. Now she'll be like, hey guys, I need to do this. And they're like, have you been talking to Juliet? And she's like, no, this is something important. And they're like, all right. I'm like, I told you it was going to be coming back. We were going to be coming back and facing this because and this is my tagline forever. When I, started my company and started my first podcast is stories connect us. Yes. And that is it. They connect us and someone's story, it's the messy parts that make us feel like, okay, you're my people, whether, the Harvard and Oxford, all of those things, you could just lead with that. And I'd be like, oh, that's a great guy, very smart, interesting. But the other parts of your story is what I want to be like, wait, I want to go to his practice because I want to be around him. I like what he's putting out. I like that energy. And that's what makes the world go around. And not enough people do it. And
everything you just said resonates with me so much. And I think the key word I would apply to you is authenticity. And authenticity really speaks to people, especially now in this like era where everyone's writing for an algorithm. Everyone is like, every communication is for an algorithm on Instagram or TikTok or whatever to get the most views or likes. And some of it is just so formularically and predictable and generic in its forced authenticity. There's not the real messy conversation. Patients all the time, they're like, you're just talking like a real person. Like I mentioned before, it kind of is a full circle moment. Like that's what it's all about. Yes, I talk to you like I talk to everyone else. This is actually me. This is not like any other version of it. And you're bringing that to a tech company though, which you see that every day. Mm-hmm. Like you actually see the opposite of that. Like you don't really get any sort of authenticity from that space.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I really appreciate it. We're having fun. And you and I could do this all day long, but I know the listeners, I don't want them to be like, they're not going to be able to be on for 2 hours and we are at 60 minutes. Is there anything that
Are we really? Oh my God.
I know. Isn't that crazy?
We really could probably do this all day.
I 100%. I already have plans. I'm flying and we're going to do more of this. Yeah. But is there anything you want to end with?
No, this has just been so refreshing. Just like just to talk to you as a human being, like even outside, I actually kind of forgot the purpose of this was, that we met through the radio, like just talking to someone about life and being a parent and how you grew up and like how we navigate this world, which is sometimes kind of increasingly isolated and more divisive. It's refreshing to just essentially a stranger because we don't really know each other that well, but you can sit with someone that you don't know. And the best part of this is I don't know anything about the things that separate us. Like, I don't really know. And I'm sure we have a lot of stuff that we have like probably some really fundamental differences about, but like, how refreshing just to start a relationship and conversation with the things that you have in common versus what you don't.
I love that. Yeah. I love that. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Craft. And you guys, you know what to do. Like, rate, review, and share. Go follow Dr. Craft at dr.randy.craft with a C. And we will see you guys for another episode of Don't Die Curious. Thank you for listening to Don't Die Curious. If this episode sparked a question, leave a review and share it with a friend. You want to connect or suggest a topic? Just look me up. I am Juliet Hahn on Instagram and LinkedIn. Until next time, stay curious and keep asking those questions. You don't know where it's going to lead you.